Grey Cup week continues with Marshall Hamilton in the bunker, and we welcome Ryan Ballantine. How are you, Ryan?
Hey, man, it's good to be here. Good to be back.
Boy, did you get trolled hard by that I noticed last week with the Stamps losing out in the West semifinal.
Look, if you can't be supremely confident in your team, what kind of fan are you? Really?
You handled it very well.
You know, like I understand my team's going to lose sometimes. They do it, rarely lately, but they do. And when they do, I'm going to be ready for it. I mean, you can't talk as much crap online as I do and not expect to get it back when your team loses. But, you just have to take what comes. And
how much did it hurt?
Watching that game was pretty painful. I'm not going to lie. The Winnipeg, everything kind of set up perfectly for Winnipeg, playing Calgary back-to-back and then having a bye week to scheme against Calgary, headed into McMahon. They used every minute of that time to game plan properly, and Winnipeg's defense absolutely shut down the Calgary offense, just like they did to the Saskatchewan offense here on Sunday, and just, they got a good chance of doing it against Hamilton again. So, Winnipeg's looking mighty sharp coming out of the West here.
Where are you on Bo, by the way? Because he came out, and I will give him credit. He pointed the finger squarely at himself, and he doesn't always do that. I mean, statistically, it was his worst playoff game ever, and he said it was his worst playoff game ever. How do you feel about the way he played and where this team is going ahead with him?
Well, I mean, obviously, he's the best quarterback in the league still. Doug Flutie had bad days. Like when you look at the pantheon of CFL greats, people have bad days. It's not the worst thing that can happen. I mean, Bo had an off day. And really, they were still in the lead at halftime. He was having a terrible game, and they were in the lead at halftime. And defensively, they kind of broke down. They weren't able to stop Strevler, Harris, and that other
Zach?
kid out of the backfield. No, they
Dembski?
Dembski. I think they limited Zach. I mean, when you look at Strevler, he just ran the ball. He ran Wildcat offense for the entire fourth quarter. But I think they did a good job. I mean, Bo had an off day. It happens. He's still the winningest quarterback in CFL history. He's still the only Stampeder quarterback with 2 Grey Cups. There's nothing wrong with Bo Mitchell.
I have a bit of a theory, and I think it applies to both games, but I really believe that in that semifinal and in the Sunday's final in Saskatchewan, the team that wanted it more won. Now, that sounds cliche-ish, but when I looked at the reason why Strevler, in my opinion, ran the ball so successfully in that fourth quarter was because collectively, not just Strevler, but collectively the offensive line, the offense of Winnipeg wanted the ball, wanted it more than Calgary's defense. It was like the air was starting to fall out of the balloon that the Calgary Stampeders were in. I mean, I have never in my time knowing Bo Levi Mitchell and knowing Dave Dickinson seen 2 more deflated expressions on their faces as they every time they panned to Bo, every time they panned to Dave Dickinson, you saw this look of kind of like confusion, like, is this happening? And how is this happening? And why is this happening? And what do I do to get out of this treadmill that I'm on that's not going anywhere? And in my view, it was just because one team wanted it more than the other. And I felt that in the Saskatchewan game too.
Well, I think when you look at the game in Calgary, you saw Bo Mitchell was obviously frustrated, but when you look at his receiving core, Kamar Jordan's playing his first game of the year. Mm-hmm. Eric Rogers is out. Reggie Bagleton is just getting doubled all day. And you don't really have those kind of playmakers because Juwan Brescison is out. You've got, Eric Rogers is not there. And the other guys that are stepping up, but they're not the caliber of receiver that they're working with. Bo didn't trust his eyes. Bo didn't trust his throws. And as a result, he was off offensively. And on the defense, I mean, hell, you had 9 new starters at the beginning of the year, and you had everybody from the offensive line or defensive line except Derek Wigan was injured. Mm-hmm. So the starting defensive line wasn't there either. Now, that's not an excuse. You play the game with the people you have. But when you look at, that poll that said John Huffnagel has 0% of the vote.
3%.
Well, it was 3% of the vote. They showed 0 on the screen. 3% of the vote. Are you kidding me? The guy's team got 12 wins in a year where he replaced 75% of his defense, lost his starting quarterback for, and the guy who's making the second most money in the league, loses that guy for 7 games. They still put up 12 wins. I mean, what John Hufnagel was able to do with the roster this year after the turnover that they saw from, a rebuilding year here in Calgary is 12-6. A rebuilding year anywhere else in the CFL, and you maybe miss the playoffs. And so what Hufnagel was able to do here is just crazy.
Well, like many Western Canadians, particularly Albertans, you're arguing with the results of the vote. And that's why we have a democracy. That's why we put it to a vote.
I'm stunned that the viewers of the Rod Pedersen show are putting Jeremy O'Day at the top. I'm amazed.
Shocking, I know.
It's shocking. I'm willing to bet if you put up any kind of vote with a Rough Rider involved, they're going to win that
But
vote.
I'll say this, Jeremy O'Day in January didn't have a head coach and didn't have a quarterback.
Well,
he did a
had
hell of
head
a
coach.
job.
He had a head coach. He had Craig Dickinson.
Didn't name one.
In a guy that should have been a head coach a long time ago. Chris Jones poisoned this franchise for a couple of years before moving on.
Thank you for saying that.
And it was a good thing that Chris Jones negotiated himself an exit window somehow into his contract and then bailed for Cleveland. Look at what it's done for the Browns.